Hey everybody, welcome to What's Up Wednesday. This week I want to talk about a topic that it doesn't apply to every company, but when it does, it's really critical that we address it, and that is lone worker safety. Now, when I say lone worker safety, a lot of people may ask what that is. And basically, lone worker safety is ensuring the health and safety of an employee or a worker who is sent out to conduct tasks on their own. And this is very common when we look at a lot of different industries that I know that ISS works in. We have remote locations, solar projects being built, or wind energy projects being built in very remote locations. Might be oil field pipeline, any of those types of things where you have people who are traveling to and from a remote location and potentially working in a remote location. Now, I've read many a fatality narrative of examples of lone workers who have been found deceased. And I've done some expert witness work on some cases and also done some investigation work on some cases where primarily workers fell when they were working alone and they were found later. And it's a horrible thing. So I think that we need to address the fact that, one, if we have people who are out working alone, and I mean that could be estimators, that could be salespeople if we work in a sales capacity. Basically, anybody who is not immediately supervised, not on premises, and is working remotely. So important things to consider. I think some of the things that people need to consider is what we need to do and how we need to manage a lone worker safety program or a protocol. And I think it's critical to point out that we need to have a program. If we have lone workers, we need to have a written policy or program that talks a little bit about the requirements. So some of the things that should be considered when we have people working alone are that, one, we need to assess potential hazards. We need to know what they're going to be facing. Oftentimes they'll be facing driving related hazards. If they're going out to a very remote site, let's just say in the mountains in the summertime and it's hot, or in the winter when it's really cold, what happens if their vehicle breaks down? We need to be thinking about things at that level. Hydration, way to stay cool, warm, means of communication. I've been to job sites all over the country where there was absolutely no phone service until you got to some kind of a satellite Wi-Fi system that your phone would connect to. But, traveling out into the mountains outside of Elko, Nevada, or in the middle of nowhere in Utah, there's no phone service. So we need to be thinking about that. I think that we also need to establish a check-in protocol, whatever that might look like. Now, I'm not going to determine what that check-in protocol is, but as an employer, we need to have one. We need to develop it. We need to make it a policy. We need to communicate it to people. Thirdly, we need to find a way to maintain open communication. Again, cell service in a lot of cases in remote work is not something we can rely upon. Now, with Starlink and some of these other developments that we have, it makes it somewhat easier for using those systems. We're not using AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile or one of the other services. We need to make sure that our lone workers have the proper PPE. I think anybody going out needs to have an emergency kit. They need to have first aid kit, fire extinguisher, all of those things in case of an emergency. Again, blankets, warm blankets, water, potentially food, all of those things. We need to make sure that we have the appropriate personal protective equipment as well as emergency equipment in the vehicle, because generally they're going to be driving in a vehicle. Thirdly, or next, I should say, training in workplace safety and hazard recognition is going to be really, really important. We know that these folks are going to have to assess hazards, make determinations on their own. So we need to make sure that they're properly trained to make those decisions and that they very clearly understand all of our policies around climbing and fall protection, policies around dealing with wildlife, whatever it may be. They need to be very thoroughly trained. And ideally, we put something in place to help monitor. Now, I know that I've got two kids who are between 18 and 21 years old. And even today, we have them connected on an app called Life 360. And the nice thing about that is we can see where they are at any given time. So if there's an emergency, we can find them. And I know that with our oldest son who lives in Tucson most of the year going to school, we actually have a Garmin InReach messenger device that can connect to a phone if all infrastructure goes out. So we can communicate via satellite that way. But I think it's really important that we consider that we need to have some way to be able to monitor these employees. And I'll touch on that a little bit more in a minute. Again, I mentioned we need to have a policy. We need to have a written program. That's absolutely critical. And all of the things I'm talking about need to be in that program. If you don't have a program, we have templates of programs that we've developed that cover all of this stuff. And then finally, make sure that we understand regulations and standards, whether it's OSHA or it's a state program. What are the requirements around lone worker safety? Let's make sure our policies address all of those things. So let's get a little bit into lone worker safety devices and systems. So there are different types of systems that can be utilized to kind of track workers or stay in touch with workers when a cell phone isn't adequate. Now, I know I got a good friend out there somewhere, Shannon Posey, who developed a product called Smart Connect. And I haven't talked to Shannon, so I need to check in with him and find out, how he's doing. But Smart Connect was an amazing system that was designed to track people originally within refineries and chemical plants, but then was really well tailored to lone worker safety and being able to track people who are out on projects such as wind energy sites or solar projects that are out in the middle of nowhere. But some of the different systems that we could look at is something that we could activate in case of an emergency, like an SOS beacon that sends a signal out that says, hey, there's an emergency, I need help now. And there are a lot of different ones on the market you can look at. Again, I talked a little bit about systems that track the location of workers. Life 360 works great with family. I don't know that workers would subscribe to something like Life 360, but there are a lot of other systems out there that we can utilize and subscribe to. We also should establish a check-in procedure with intervals. So basically, if we know somebody's going out, we expect that they check in every 2 hours and we give them a 15-minute window or whatever that might be. And if they don't meet that check-in interval, then we escalate the severity of a situation. Again, this has to be all written. And then finally, there are devices that will detect things such as falls, and they'll send a signal out saying somebody has fallen. And, there are a lot of different pieces of technology, GPS tracking systems out there. Blackline GPS is one that I'm aware of. So think about what those options would be and address lone worker safety. I think it's one of those areas that is often, it's forgotten. It's not addressed, and it needs to be. And I've seen so many examples of lone workers who have fallen within a wind turbine or have had a heart attack or some other medical emergency and have been found dead later, and they were out working alone. And this isn't just about fatality type events. It's about any kind of an emergency. And I think we need to be prepared. So think about that. I would say evaluate the policy if you have one or if you don't have one. And if you need help, let us know. Hopefully that helps. We'll see you next Wednesday.